Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. You are listening to a podcast by Pastor Eric Deepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. If you enjoy Faith Over Breakfast, we encourage you to rate it on the Apple Podcast app, on Spotify, or Google Play. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. My name is Pastor Eric Deepen, and I am pastor of the village. And across from me, so I've got Pastor Andy Littleton. First name Pastor, second name Andy, last name Littleton.
There it is.
And he is one of the pastors over at Mission Church, or maybe we can call you one of the founding pastors of Mission Church. Mm-hmm. And we've been doing this podcast forever.
Yep.
It's the day after Thanksgiving, and we decided to tell you what we do.
What do we do as pastors? Hey, you know, the temptation for us is think you don't care, but maybe some of you out there wonder what does a pastor do all week? And if you're curious, this is the podcast for you. Actually, one of our best reflections is after we thought it was over. So
yeah,
don't wait.
Don't fast forward.
Don't fast
wait
forward
to the end.
Yeah. I said don't wait. Do wait. Anyway, enjoy. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening to our voices. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
So what are we talking about?
I don't know. You didn't text me, and I didn't text you because neither of us wanted to talk about what the other person wants to talk about.
That's right.
That's what we've decided.
That's right.
So I'm gonna get all the stuff out here for you.
Yeah, this is punishment. You're just gonna make all the sounds happen in the recording.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you decide.
I hadn't really thought about how was your Thanksgiving.
It was good. Yeah. I mean, it was good.
What'd you do?
We, we did some crazy stuff. We ate like a turkey dinner, stuffing, and some mashed potatoes.
Let's settle up. So you said turkey dinner. There's a great debate. Do you have the 1 o'clock Thanksgiving meal, or do you have the 4 or 5 o'clock Thanksgiving
We say
meal?
2 o'clock, but it's going to be more like 3 to 4.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's a later afternoon meal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a breakfast.
No.
Do you do the breakfast?
Oh, no. But my wife would prefer it to be at 1.
I would rather.
Her family did it at 1.
Oh, okay. I mean,
1 was the cutoff.
The cutoff. Yeah.
You sit down at 1.
From a practical standpoint, as far as how I feel after big meals, I would rather have it earlier.
Yeah, no,
and
totally.
then kind of work it off for the day. But I'm glad we don't have it deep into the evening. That would be awful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm quite satisfied. It was all very tasty, and watched the Arizona Wildcats
just
basketball
your family?
game. Mostly my wife's side of the family.
Okay.
Yeah. Watched the Wildcats. Had football
Did we
on
win?
in the background. We did. We beat Michigan State, which was just huge. Let's see what else. I chipped away at a book of the author that we're going to have an interview with on this podcast.
Yeah,
James Martin.
You're interviewing him on Tuesday.
That's right. Yeah. You could still join, Eric. You could make this a priority.
I could, except I'm in a big meeting that can't be rearranged. So
big meeting.
Yeah, big meeting. I'm a big.
So what's with all your big meetings? Maybe that's the topic. All of Eric's big meetings.
They're all big, man.
I know.
Everything's big.
Talk about the big meetings.
I'm going Walmart
big
meetings.
Salad. Yeah.
No, it's an elder meeting. I don't want to reschedule an elder meeting for a podcast.
Okay. Yeah, that probably
especially since childcare is involved and all those kinds of things.
Yeah. So you do elder meetings in the middle of the workday.
Yeah, because our elders are all paid in work.
Yeah, that's it. So it's kind of like a staff meeting, a bonus staff meeting.
It's a bonus staff meeting. Except we only have staff meetings once a month. So.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. No, it's nice. I mean, I like it because we can sit and pray it's like a 3-hour meeting. So you pray and then talk through people and stuff that's going on.
Yeah, we do that too. Let's talk about elders meetings.
All right, elders meetings. Woohoo!
So we found it. Ours are our last one. Our last one went from about 6:30 p.m. to about 10 p.m. So a similar length potentially. So why elders meetings? You have these monthly?
So we have a elders meeting every week.
You have elders meeting every week,
We
but they're all staff. So there's
No, just 3 elders. There's no staff.
but I mean they're all paid.
They're all paid elders.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have once a month all leadership meeting, which would be in a normal church, all deacons and elders.
Okay.
And then we have once a month a staff meeting, which includes the 2 administrators.
Yeah. So that's
And
once a month.
the
Okay.
other pastor.
Yeah.
Because we have pastors who aren't elders. So
Right.
but we have like pastor deacons and pastor elders. That's how we
Got
do
it.
it.
Yeah.
Kind of follow the Orthodox structure more.
Yeah. Okay. That's exciting. You want to explain that?
Well, the Orthodox Church it has
They have a lot more deacons.
And they have deacons. And
So are you the bishop?
Yes. I'm Bishop Eric.
Yeah. You kind of might be.
Yeah, no, I think the village is kind of more closely structured towards Orthodox Church.
Yeah.
It's probably theology leans more Anglican and Orthodox. That's probably where we land.
Anglodox.
Anglodox. We're probably more Anglodox. I like that. Let's do that. I'm going to start the new Protestant denomination. Anglodox.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So people always wonder what pastors really do. So
do they?
I hear
wonder?
this is something I hear. There's some who just say, "Oh, you do so much," and then there's other people, usually less connected to the church, who go, "So what do you even do?" I think
you work on Sundays.
You give one talk on Sundays, and what else do you do? I see you at coffee shops.
Yeah, you get to drink coffee and
a lot of coffee,
eat a lot of good food, and hang out with people.
And I think, because I get it, because if I'm not in church, I think, you know what, I would love some time to sit with my friends and have coffee.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be great. So you see somebody who's, a lot of their job is to sit with people either in an office or over coffee, and you go, oh, that's nothing. So anyway, what do you, what's with the meetings? What's happening here? Why is this not just the easiest stinking job of all time, Eric?
Well, honestly, if it didn't involve people, it would be the easiest.
Sure. Yeah, well, but it happens to involve them, doesn't it? I remember, so when I was studying in Chicago, there was a guy in my program, this is back in 2004.
Back in
2004. And I remember asking, why are you getting into ministry? And he said, well, I've been in the corporate world for some time, and I just thought a new career path would be nice. This seems like it has a lot of opportunities, change of pace.
Interesting.
And I remember thinking, even as a pretty young guy back then, I thought, oh, he probably doesn't get the people part.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I first have to say, when I think about pastors, I'm very influenced by the Reformed world. So I'm thinking about people who hold the ruling elder position and are paid.
Explain that. Ruling elder versus what? What are the options?
Oh, for us at the village versus...
I mean, in the world out there. Like when people... So you're distinguishing that from something else, and our listeners, great people, but they may not understand all the options.
Yeah. Well, I think let me just explain biblically what I mean by that is I mean somebody who is committed to prayer, the overseeing of the community, and the defending of doctrine.
Yep.
And I picked those up out of Titus and Acts more than I do out of 1 Timothy, but 1 Timothy 2, not chapter 2, but also. So I think for me, those 3 things are kind of prayer and the study of Scripture. That's category 1. Then the overseeing of the church, meaning the shepherding, the care of people, both in an administrative sense and in a face-to-face, hearing about your life, praying for you, offering you things. And then the third one, it kind of ties into those, but helping people have right doctrine and refuting false doctrine. So my job is to protect the flock from people who might want to come in and teach things that are counter to Scripture. And all of that, I think, involves a lot of people. I think every one of those aspects has an evangelistic aspect to it, because I feel like that I'm called to encourage people in that and model that. So at some level. So those are kind of so.
And what other options are out there? There's what other types of elder could there be? or
Well,
pastor?
I mean, I think, I don't know. I mean, I think other options would be, maybe you can help me on this. I don't know. What other options do you see out there? I'm trying to think. My brain's a little foggy from all the turkey.
Sure.
So maybe you can
Well,
assist me
some
on that.
traditions divvy up ruling elders and teaching elders,
Yes.
and this is and really that's quite similar, except that some are some might teach the community and some might not.
Right. So an elder in general they may hold different responsibilities based on their gifting.
Sure.
You might hire one to predominantly teach, another to administrate,
And there's that. So there's
Yeah.
churches that are overseen. I think overseer is really a better word
Yeah,
than
that's
elder
good.
sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, in our context, I think back in the day, people lived 30, 40 years often, and it was older people, but they were probably about our age. And anyway, they could live longer, but life expectancy wasn't what it is today. So it didn't necessarily mean a bunch of 80-year-olds.
right.
But the overseer is more of the job. It's shepherding. It's watching over people. So some churches have elders. There's some they're ruling elders, some they're teaching elders, stuff like that. Some churches are actually governed by like in a democratic style, where
I see where okay.
everybody who comes has a vote in everything. Okay,
You're going to
that would be
how different churches are structured. And
yeah,
because
because people don't know this, and
Yeah.
and some there is one person, a pastor, who makes all the decisions,
Yes.
and then some
has
have
a board of sorts.
some have interesting hybrids. Well,
Yeah.
some don't have boards.
That's true.
Some it's just one person.
And that depends on the size of the church too.
Depends on the size of the church. And then others, the pastor ultimately is the decision maker, but he might create subboards that are under his own control and direction, or his or her, I should say, own direction. But usually in the like ruling elder world, typically those people are chosen by the church members as opposed to appointed outside of it. It's kind of a hybrid. It's
Right. There are lots
the
of
democratic
different-
side is that the people choose their leaders. Once the leaders are chosen, they make decisions for the good of the community, not necessarily
Right.
with the permission of the community, though they should really care what the community thinks.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other
But
things you would add
well,
to that?
I would just say that if you're talking about the general public, no matter even how theologically astute they are or how they are about ecclesiology, meaning the whole church structure and ruling structures of different denominations and the Catholic and Orthodox Church, I most people just want to know who your priest is or who your pastor is.
Yeah.
Right. That's all they think. Well, who's the pastor over there, or who are the pastors, or who's the priest?
Yeah.
And what's the priest like?
Yeah.
I like,
Yeah.
on the Catholic end here in Tucson. I like, Father
Well,
Harry, or whoever. I like this guy named Andy Littleton over at Mission. He's
the pastor or the priest sets the tone, and that's important. In some cases, makes all the decisions, and people don't necessarily always peek into that.
right.
But it is important. So, like, say, if you think about the government of the United States of America, okay, so the president doesn't make all the decisions, right?
Sure.
There are plenty of other people who make decisions,
But he
but
sets
they
the tone.
very much set the tone.
Yeah.
They're the one that's going to communicate things the most. They become the representation of this entity out to the world.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the more senior you are, the more
Yeah.
foundational of a person you are, the more that
Sure.
feels like the case. And at this church, that's you.
Yeah.
And at my church, at this point, now it's me.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would say that Mark and Michael exert more and more influence. But
Yeah.
but
Absolutely.
Sue and I together exert a different kind of influence, and that's okay. But what do we do? Like the actual
So
nuts
then
and bolts?
you meet. You have meetings.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Well,
you don't have to tell us everything, Eric. But what?
no, it's fine.
do you want people to know?
So the nuts and bolts of being a pastor looks a little different from me than from a lot of people, because the village's structure is a bit more communal. But I can give you a gist of what.
Well, let's really quick say what do you do in elders meetings?
Yeah. So I mean, I think in an elders meeting, we usually it varies, but there is a big chunk of prayer. So a lot of times what we'll do is we got a big whiteboard, and whoever gets there first who's early, will sit down and kind of begin to list out people on our whiteboard who we want to, in particular that week, be praying more specifically for. We have what we call an eldering shepherding list. So it's every single person, even if they're not a member of our church, who regularly attends. And we see that as you come once a month, and we're going to put you on the piece of paper, and we pray for you, and we think about how we can move you towards Jesus. So that's one thing. The other thing is there are what we call immediate crises, meaning the things are not going well, either just even in the building, like there's something that's happening, we need to deal with that, or there's something going on in somebody's life that we need to act immediately on, or we need to get other people on to deal with, to push it on down to people, to the lead ministers or the deacons, as we call them, lead ministers. The reason we do that is that in our church, we really do see the position of deacon as an ordained position, a position that gives, and when you go out into the world and you say you're a deacon, people are like, some people understand that, but most people are like, what? But
if you're coming from a Catholic background, it holds more weight. Than if you're coming from more of an evangelical background
or an unchurched background, then you don't know.
Yeah.
But you know what a minister is. You have some idea that.
Sure.
So
I didn't. I remember when I started working in churches, the term deacon was very fuzzy to me. I didn't really get it.
Very fuzzy.
Yep.
So we do that. And then there's also just a certain amount of catching up and caring for one another that's in those meetings.
Yeah.
And, planning out, maybe there's the vision for the year is always being reassessed. And we have an evaluation, like we have usually work on like 3 words that we're building into the people's lives, 3 kind of concepts. And so, those are evaluated every so often.
How are we doing with that? And this is a weekly meeting for you.
This is a weekly meeting.
Wow. So that's kind of the reverse of typical and the reverse of us, in that you've got more like a staff, which would be, I guess, more the administrative meeting is monthly, but you do this weekly.
Yeah.
And we do the staff administrative side weekly and the elders monthly.
Right. So our administrative meetings are purely done to run the larger events and things that we do. And we meet once a month, and our admin is all about, we have a set amount of events that happen all year. And so we're working on making sure those events are really well communicated, and how do we engage people, and are we meeting our goals and things like that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, we so elders meetings are similar for us to some degree. We have especially our church members are all broken down to where each one of our elders has a list that they're responsible to be kind of praying for, and just trying to be more aware of all the time. And so we check in on those. Those elders give a report on how those folks are doing.
Right.
They're supposed to be praying more regularly. I've got that little list up in my office all the time, so those people are just in front of my eyes more. And but we do we pray together for an extended amount of time about that and the various decisions that we feel are before us. That's more of the urgent stuff. It's usually more big picture. Where are we going with what we're teaching? If there's a conflict in the community, or somebody's struggling significantly that needs group discernment, we'll discuss that there. Or if there's just a big decision that's going to impact everyone, we'll discuss it there. And those surprisingly take a long time. Yeah, 2 to 3 hours, usually more like 3. And then our team meetings are sometimes, I think, stuff that you guys would do in elders creep into those. We try to be careful with that, but sometimes there is somebody who has a need, since that's a weekly meeting, that's like, hey, who's following up with Joe over there? And then it's all the nuts and bolts for us. Like our building being shared with another church, that's become a surprising amount of that meeting is the various movements of and we try to share our building. That's something that we with a select group,
right? But
because of that, there's a lot of details of kind of who's here, when, what's possible, right? What do they need? Yeah,
and we, it's interesting. Well, let me just get. I think that's a meeting, but let me give you, maybe people just are like, oh man, I'm seriously tuning out now. But let me tell you what pastors do, at least what I do in general. Well, I think a couple of things. One, I mean, I only speak about 30 to 35 times a year. And then the other guys pick up everything else. I may even preach less than that. So I'm not having to prepare every week like some pastors have to.
Yeah.
So that allows me to prepare ahead of time for some stuff, or actually to prepare to do trainings, because our leadership team meetings involve a lot of training. So there's some planning for that. And then, so there's actual study of scripture and preparing for teaching. That's both done collectively and individually. I mean, I have my own private study and structure of my sermons. So that takes, I'll tell you what, it takes as much time as it takes, not enough time, because I don't have enough time. But when I break it down, I probably spend 10 hours in the week that I'm going to preach. Maybe I've been reading the text, or I've been following along, like, we're going to be going through the Gospel of John. So I will be in the narrative of the Gospel of John for a while.
Yeah.
It's in my brain. It will be part of my devotional life, because I actually don't believe in a separate devotional life from your sermon.
Yeah.
Some people do. Honestly, just to be opinionated, I think that's dumb, because I think your devotional life should be right up front for people. And it's most tangible when it's in the text you're teaching, and people can see how that works for them. So it's a modeling thing.
I tend to agree with that. I think
it doesn't mean I don't have another devotional life, but like I often whatever practices are in that text.
Yeah, I would say I primarily spend time in that text and view that as my devotional life for the week, except that there's things that are going on in my life and my relationship with Jesus that are different than that, and I'm going to need to pray around those things and such. But I
would just argue that the disciplines are more important than the text in a sense.
Yeah.
So I may be doing different disciplines. That text may just be informing those disciplines.
Sure. Yeah. No, for sure. I was going to say that, I think I personally, and I think different pastors' brains work differently. And so
we are all different people.
For me, if I just sit down and like kind of stare at it and try to work it out, I often don't get very far. Sometimes I have to step in for a little while.
Sure.
Go do other things. And sometimes while I'm kind of out and about and other things are going on, some of the better insights will come to me that I can then, pitch in there. And I found if I don't kind of take it in these small chunks, I don't have that space to think. Now, that's just how I operate. So if I just had this like 8-hour chunk, it wouldn't be very good. But I tend to find that later in the week, some of the ideas that I had earlier in the week are more clear. And I take my initial ideas about the sermon to our, this is another meeting we have, but we kind of have you could call it a
teaching team.
It is kind of like that, like a teaching team-ish meeting. It maybe is another elders meeting in a way, where I'll take, here's what I'm thinking. What do you all see, hear, think? Our interns get to be there too. And just get some feedback. And there are usually some good thoughts that come out of that for me. And that's early in the week. So.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, some of the other thing for us, and this is where it may be different than other pastors, is I would say that our home, probably we have people over from the community or from the neighborhood at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. And Susan and I probably once a week visit people together. Now, since I've come back from sabbatical, we have intentionally been really focused on the leadership of our community and visiting them, working through stuff with them, and trying to help begin to look at what it looks like to develop our leadership in a more, like us shepherding them in more specific ways. So there's hospitality, there's the study, there's meetings. And then for me, there's a whole series of podcasts and promotions and writing that I do. And then there's all of that. Some days, like I may end up doing 3-4 hours of building maintenance.
Yeah.
So for me, the past, I also, you're involved in the finances, you're involved in the building, you're involved in counseling. So then I meet with 2 or 3 people a week, and then it depends. It used to be, I have shied away from this, but it used to be I would be doing a lot of counseling. So maybe 4 counseling meetings a week, but that really burned me out. Mm-hmm. So, and I didn't find, I mean, I think it was effective at some level, and I still do counseling. But I try to do it a little bit differently than have formal meetings.
Okay.
Counseling meetings.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got all that stuff peppered in
to
a certain degree too, and it's shared with some other people depending on the person and the situation. But yeah, and then there's just all the various strategizing, and there's a new person in the community you want to meet, and
sure.
We actually have been on a bit of a hiatus from our stuff going on in our home for various reasons, but we used to have a lot of people in our house and evening stuff. We may bring some of that back as a couple, but but that's definitely happening, I think, with some of our other leaders even more at the moment. Like they're kind of carrying more of that piece at the moment. But I spend a lot of time doing those things throughout the week. So I'll be with a leader here, or somebody who's thinking through something here, and then somebody who just needs to talk, or just somebody I'm trying to connect with who I'm wondering how they're doing or something, or they reach out and say, hey, you got time? And so, yeah, like a week like this, interesting, with people off work, it's looked a little different. Some people who I don't normally hear from, and I wanted to check in because they had a break. And,
right.
Which is interesting because you go, oh, okay, that's good. You almost, I don't know about you, but some of a realization I've had is when other people are on a break is when there's a sense like you need to be more available. So
right.
your schedule is a little like holiday breaks and evenings are hard because that's exactly when other people aren't working.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't factor that in, you just can't do it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's hard to figure it out.
Unless you're doing more of the, like, you're just the pastor who gets up and talks, and you're not really right. You've got a big team around you or something. And
but even then,
that's rare. Yeah.
I mean, I think what I experienced from pastors growing up was, well, in like a church like El Camino Baptist Church, where I was on staff, not paid. My experience was that pastors, they had office hours, and those office hours were about 30 hours.
Right.
So they had to be in the building. And then they probably did one Bible study in their house. Yeah. It was a Bible study, like a home group.
Or they might host it at the church, but it was an evening thing.
Yeah, it was an evening thing. Yeah. And then, if they were college ministry or high school ministry, they had their, Wednesday night thing that they did. And that was it, and then you were involved in the big events of the church.
Right.
But you did the office hours. I'm not sure, and so people could come meet you during the day, but
very few people can do that.
Yeah. But mostly that was, or maybe you did some lunches, or you went to pastors' meetings.
Yes, there's all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And so, but it's just different. Like I don't have any office hours. We purposely have, we're sitting in basically the closest thing you can get to an office at the Village building. Yeah. Because we chose, we have limited room, and we don't want people in the office. Yeah, you can go sit in the living room.
We have a new office. That's my office, which is kind of a newer. I had one at a random city building for years. But
is it at the church building now?
This is now at the house that we've renovated. Right. But I have come to
close to the building, right?
It's like one property over. Yeah. I have come to appreciate that space. For me, it's I've got, books and files and things I've got to keep somewhere. But also, I'm just starting to use it again. But when I had the one at the city space that was working well for me, I realized like having a private space for certain types of meetings was really good. And also one where I kind of knew where everything was. To me, there's something about a familiarity. And then there are certain tasks I do well. I actually do things like sermon prep well out at coffee. But there are certain, I would say, administrative tasks that start to involve things like paperwork and whatnot and receipts and stuff like that I do really well when it's an environment where I know where everything is. I know where things go. Right. I know where I can find a stamp and a piece of tape and whatever. Yeah. And so I I think I've almost aged into an office. It's like I thought I'd never want one, but now I'm like, I don't want to carry everything around in a backpack anymore. I actually like having a zone, and it's kind of a new thing for me.
That's nice. I mean, we have a little administrative desk that serves for all that,
right?
But yes, privacy. I mean, I think we, like, unlike you, our building is different in that we intentionally made it a house, so we don't actually share it because you don't share your home in the sense of I don't have another family come in and like, well, from this time period to this time period, you all don't live here. Or
so we can't just have all our stuff out.
Yeah, and so but it also allows like us, our whole church, to feel as a family, and so they all mostly have keys,
right?
And they come and they go, and so someone can show up at any time. In fact, when I practice, if I want to practice my sermon, I put a note on the door saying, building closed, pastor practicing, so that when people come by, they're like, oh, I shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So, and people have gotten better because counseling does happen, and we have private rooms. You can shut doors, but people, will call and say, hey, I want to come over and spend blah, blah, blah time. Is there going to be anybody here? If it's during the day.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that is a difference. And you've got more of an older traditional Baptist style church that has a bunch of rooms.
Yes.
Ours does not. Our building wasn't a church, but it's actually near perfect layout for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it's got this game room, like community room, and we added a porch area. So the meal time, there's just a lot of space to sit inside and out, and which you have too. But we all those little rooms that churches used to have,
right? We
don't. So there's not a good zone to really office. You can sit in there, but even meetings and stuff I found, I think sometimes we get distracted by the very nature of it being kind of living roomy. Back in our lounge room, like I'll find myself kind of tuning out and I'm like lounging on the couch. And so we have a new meeting room over at the house that's kind of like conference room sort of space, but it's really like, study groups can meet there and stuff like that. But I think we'll start meeting in there more. Maybe it's my own attention span that needs it. Like maybe I need to sit up straight and look at people and not like, lean back with my phone in the corner of a really comfy leather couch, which is what happens to me. So that's
hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this was like a really compelling conversation.
Oh, it's incredible. If I were our listeners, I'd be riveted.
Compelling.
Yeah. Well, it's the day after Thanksgiving, and
it is.
Guess what?
It is the day after Thanksgiving.
That's it's a little. If you give a rip about what a couple pastors do, now you know.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll continue this into December because I'm happy to do it for the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So we can get some more podcasts because we have somebody just on Thanksgiving said, "Oh man, I was always listening to you and Andy, and then you guys kind of stopped doing it. And then I noticed you were coming back, and I've had a hard time getting back into the pattern of listening. I missed listening to you guys.
Oh dear.
So I was like, oh wow, so people do listen, and they're like, oh, they're not doing anything.
There's something to consistency. Well, I'm interviewing, and maybe we can share this one a little later December. But James Martin, who's this is a guy coming from Catholic world, I think Jesuits, who wrote a book on Lazarus. I'm finding it very interesting. We get reached out to every once in a while about helping to promo a book or something. Well, some of it seems more legit than others.
Yes.
And this guy is a known promoter that we've worked with before.
Right.
So I'm actually really I'm looking forward to this interview. I almost wish I had more time. But what we'll do is we'll capture that interview, and you and I will listen to it and talk about it and record our reflections before and after. Okay.
Yep. Sounds great.
So we'll share that later in December, and then you and I can have talks early December.
Yeah.
December.
So there'll be a full
there'll be plenty.
A presence. You're gonna have Faith Over Breakfast presence.
Oh, yeah. Quite the presence. Yeah.
Yep.
So looking forward to that. Yeah. There you go.
All right. Well, thank you, Andy, for coming after Thanksgiving. are you taking the rest of the day off?
Ish. I've got. So yeah, and these are where the lines are blurry as a pastor. So I've got, I would say, friends now who used to be in my youth group, who are now adults and coming home to see family, and we're all going to hang out here in a little bit for an hour and a half or 2 hours. These are, great people I love to catch up with. So I would hang out with them as friends, but actually I was a minister to them. What is that? Good question. I'm not sure. I don't care. I love hanging out with them. But we'll do that for a while. Am I working? I don't know. And then after that, I'll toy around with the sermon for a little and go hang out with my family the rest of the day.
Yeah, I think I have boiled down the work for a pastor is anytime that you go away to be with people who have any connection to you through ministry, past, present, and maybe future, that's away from your family.
Yeah.
That's work.
But I would, the only thing I'd add to that is a lot of times, even like you're doing something with your family and a relationship might have that layer to it that enters into that too.
Yes. And if your family,
I'm saying it's complicated.
It is. Well, it's so complicated that like my daughter is she's a deacon in our church. She's a lead minister. And so if I go out to lunch with her, it's dad and daughter.
Yeah.
It's also, we're talking about village stuff. Oh, now we're like I'm giving her some instructions or like, which would be a thing for a father to do. And I'm as her leader. So if there's that relationship right there.
Well, if our church life is very much a part of who we are.
Right.
I think this isn't just true for pastors. I think this is true for people in the community that really embrace the role of the church in their life. There aren't these neat and tidy little containers.
There isn't. In fact, there
shouldn't be.
Our job as overseers to go all the way back is to model all of this for everyone as best we can. Humility, repentance, and leadership. All of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's probably the best part of the podcast.
Right there. Boom. You got it. All right, guys.
You can always email us at faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com. And thank you for tuning in.
Yep. You've been listening to Faith Over Breakfast with Pastor Eric Siepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. Please share us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you.